Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. As UPSC aspirants, it's crucial to keep your finger on the pulse of critical issues facing India. And today we're doing a deep dive into a topic that's literally and figuratively a hot one, forest fires.
That's right. We're not just talking about a few trees catching fire here and there. This is serious stuff with a staggering 36% of India's forest cover prone to fires. That's a third of our nation's green lungs at risk.
It's crazy, right? And often it feels like we only hear about it after some major tragedy happens, like the recent evacuations in Uttarakhand or the devastating loss of wildlife in Bandipur. It's all reactive firefighting instead of, proactive prevention.
Exactly. Reactive measures are just band-aids on a much deeper wound. We need to shift the focus to preventing these fires in the first place.
So let's get into it. Our research from the Hindu has revealed some pretty alarming trends, like the fact that the number of forest fires in India has increased tenfold over the past 2 decades.
Yeah, and get this, despite a marginal increase in overall forest cover, so it's not just about more forests leading to more fires, something else is going on.
Okay, so what's fueling this inferno, so to speak?
Well, the data points to a major culprit: human actions. About 90% of these fires are triggered by us careless humans, whether it's slash and burn agriculture, unattended campfires, or even something as small as a tossed cigarette butt.
It's kind of depressing to think about how our negligence is literally fanning these flames. And as if human actions weren't enough, we have climate change adding fuel to the fire too, right?
Yeah, that's right. Rising temperatures and prolonged dry spells are creating a tinderbox-like situation in our forests, making them incredibly vulnerable.
So we've got this dangerous cocktail of human negligence and climate change that's turning our forests into potential infernos, and the consequences go way beyond just charred trees.
Oh, absolutely. The impact is far-reaching, affecting not only the environment, but also our economy, health, and even social fabric.
So let's break down these ripple effects. Starting with the environmental damage, we're talking biodiversity loss, soil degradation, disrupted water cycles.
Not to mention the massive carbon emissions. Did you know Indian forest fires release a whopping 69 million tons of CO2 annually? That's a serious blow to our climate goals.
It's alarming, isn't it? And then there's the economic fallout, the loss of valuable timber, non-timber forest products, livelihoods. The Ministry of Environment, Forest, and Climate Change estimates annual losses of 1.74 lakh crore due to forest degradation, a significant chunk of which is attributed to fires.
That's a massive hit to our economy. And we can't forget the social disruption. Think about those communities who depend on forests for their livelihood. They face displacement, human-wildlife conflict, and health hazards from the smoke inhalation.
It's a recipe for disaster. So we've painted a pretty grim picture here, but I know there are things being done to tackle this fiery beast, right?
Yeah.
What's the status of the Forest Fire Prevention and Management Scheme, the FFPMS?
Well, the FFPMS is a step in the right direction, but it faces some serious challenges. The budget, for one, has been wildly inconsistent, fluctuating from 46.40 crore in 2019-2020 to a mere 28.25 crore in 2022-2023.
That's like trying to build a fire station with a budget that disappears every other year. It's just not sustainable.
Hmm.
And what about technology? Are we using any high-tech tools to fight these fires?
We do have the Forest Fire Alert System, but it has its limitations. It often struggles to differentiate between forest fires and other types of fires, leading to delays in response. We're lagging behind in utilizing advanced tech like predictive modeling and real-time data integration, which could make a huge difference in early warning systems.
Okay, so we've got some work to do on the tech front. But it's not just about fancy gadgets, right? We need a multifaceted approach, something that combines policy technology and community engagement.
Absolutely. We can't fight this battle in silos. It requires a holistic strategy that involves everyone from policymakers to scientists to local communities.
And speaking of communities, they play a crucial role, right?
Absolutely. They are the eyes and ears on the ground. They have the knowledge of the local terrain, the weather patterns, even traditional fire management practices that have been passed down for generations.
And we've seen inspiring examples of this, haven't we? Like those self-help groups in Uttarakhand and Himachal Pradesh collecting pine needles to reduce fuel load. Simple yet effective solutions.
Precisely. There's so much we can learn from these communities and integrate their knowledge with modern scientific approaches for a truly holistic and effective strategy.
It's about finding that sweet spot where tradition meets innovation, local knowledge, complements scientific expertise.
Exactly. And we need to move beyond just sporadic awareness campaigns and invest in comprehensive training programs that equip communities with the skills and knowledge to become effective fire stewards.
So it's about empowering them to become true partners in fire prevention and management.
That's right. It's about fostering a sense of ownership and responsibility because at the end of the day, these are the communities whose lives are most directly impacted by forest fires.
They have the most to lose and therefore the strongest incentive to protect their environment.
Exactly. And education and awareness are key. We need to make people understand the consequences of their actions, how something as simple as leaving a campfire unattended can have devastating effects.
It's about shifting from a reactive to a proactive mindset, and that requires a collective effort from all of us.
Absolutely. We all have a role to play in protecting our forests from this fiery menace. As we dig deeper into this, I think it's easy to just categorize forest fires as purely environmental issues. But for UPSC aspirants, it's so important to recognize the economic impact, which pops up in both prelims and mains exams.
Absolutely. The economic consequences are huge, and we really need to think beyond the obvious, like, the loss of timber.
Yeah.
What are some of the less obvious economic costs that are important to understand?
Well, for one, the strain on government resources. Fighting these massive fires takes a lot of manpower equipment, emergency response infrastructure. It's a huge financial burden, especially for a developing nation like India.
And what about tourism? India is known for its natural beauty, which attracts visitors from all over the world. When these forests burn, it's not just the trees that suffer. The tourism industry takes a hit too.
Exactly. Imagine you're a tour operator who depends on ecotourism. A sudden forest fire could wipe out your business. It's not just the immediate loss of revenue either. It affects the reputation, the long-term viability of that whole sector.
It's a domino effect, really. One falling tile triggers a whole cascade of problems. So we've talked about how forest fires have these serious economic implications, which brings us back to solutions. We've touched on policy and funding, but how do we actually make sure those resources are being used effectively and are reaching the people who need them?
Transparency and accountability are key. We need clear guidelines for how those funds are allocated and used, and there needs to be a system to track progress and really assess the impact of these initiatives.
Yeah, getting rid of any ambiguity or corruption is so important. We need to make sure the money intended for fire prevention and management is actually getting to the people who need it most, especially those local communities on the front lines. What about like independent auditors? Could that help?
Definitely, having that extra layer of scrutiny can make a big difference in making sure resources are being used responsibly and effectively. And speaking of effectiveness, let's go back to technology for a minute. We talked about the forest fire alert system and its limitations. But if we want to be more proactive in our approach, how can we use technology better?
Right. It's not just about having fancy gadgets. It's about using them strategically.
Exactly. Think about data and analytics. Imagine a system that uses real-time weather data, satellite imagery, historical fire patterns to predict areas with a high probability of fires.
So it's like having a crystal ball to see where the next fire might happen.
Yeah.
It's amazing. But what do we actually do with that information? How do we translate that into action?
That's where strategic planning comes in. We can use these predictions to preemptively deploy resources, conduct controlled burns to reduce fuel load, and get alerts out to communities in those high-risk zones so they can prepare.
It's a completely different approach. Instead of reacting to fires, we're taking steps to actually stop them from happening in the first place. And this brings us back to those local communities. They are essential, right?
Absolutely. We can't forget about their invaluable knowledge of the local environment. They shouldn't be seen as just passive recipients of aid, but as partners in this whole process.
We need to empower them to become active participants in fire prevention and management. We've talked about awareness campaigns, but what about more comprehensive training programs so they have the skills and knowledge to protect their own forests?
Exactly. Imagine creating networks of local fire watch groups trained and equipped to monitor their forests, report any suspicious activity, even implement small-scale preventative measures like clearing dry brush.
It's about creating a sense of ownership and responsibility. Because at the end of the day, these are the communities that are most affected by forest fires.
Precisely. And let's not forget about their traditional knowledge. In many parts of India, these communities have been managing fires for centuries, using techniques like controlled burning to clear undergrowth. We should be learning from them and integrating these practices with modern science.
It's about finding that balance where tradition meets innovation and local knowledge enhances scientific expertise.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about prevention, but we can't forget about the people who are on the front lines when a fire does break out the firefighters. How can we support them better?
Well, first and foremost, making sure they have the best training and equipment possible. That means fire-resistant clothing, advanced communication systems, even specialized aircraft that can reach those difficult areas and drop water or fire retardant.
So we need to invest in both ground and air firefighting capabilities. It sounds like a major undertaking. And what about technology? Can it help in this aspect? We talked about drones earlier. Could they be used for more than just surveillance?
Absolutely. Drones with thermal imaging cameras can be used to pinpoint hotspots and guide ground crews. But you can even take it a step further and use them to drop fire retardant or create fire breaks, strategically preventing the fire from spreading.
That's incredible. It's not only more effective, but it also keeps firefighters safer by allowing them to operate from a distance. Technology really can be a game changer.
It can, but we need to remember that technology is just a tool. The real change has to come from a shift in our mindset as a society.
We need to go from being complacent to being proactive.
Right.
We have to understand that forest fires are everyone's problem, and we all have a responsibility to prevent them. And for our listeners who are aspiring to be civil servants, think about how you can use this knowledge in your future roles.
Will you advocate for better funding? Promote community-based solutions, champion the use of technology. You have the power to shape policy and create real change.
It's about seeing the bigger picture, understanding how environmental, economic, and social factors are all connected, and advocating for a multidimensional approach to tackle this challenge. But you don't have to wait until you're in a position of power to make a difference. Start now.
Exactly. Raise awareness, educate others, support organizations that are working to protect our forests. Every little bit helps.
And for those who want to learn more, definitely check out the Hindu Forest. Their reporting on forest fires has been really informative and has played a big part in our discussion today.
So to wrap up this part of our deep dive, keep in mind that every spark of awareness, every action taken can help protect our nation's forests. It's a collective effort, and we all have a part to play.
All right, welcome back, everyone. We spent this deep dive exploring this crucial issue of forest fires in India, breaking down the causes, consequences, and some potential solutions. But as future policymakers, it's really important to go beyond just, understanding it theoretically and think about real-world action.
Exactly. This isn't just another topic you need to memorize for exams. It's an urgent issue that needs action. And remember, action doesn't always have to mean big policy changes or grand strategies. Even individual actions can make a big difference when we all come together.
Yeah, it's about taking responsibility for our actions.
Yeah.
Even simple things like making sure your campfire is completely out or, disposing of cigarette butts properly that can actually prevent a disaster. We often underestimate individual responsibility, but it really is the foundation for any large-scale change.
And for those of you aiming to crack the UPSC, think about how these insights can translate into effective governance. Will you push for stricter enforcement of those regulations, advocate for more funding for prevention, or support community-based solutions?
Yeah, it's recognizing that forest fires are not just an environmental problem. They're tied to our economic stability and social well-being. The effects really ripple out and touch every part of our progress as a nation.
And remember, forests are more than just pretty scenery or a source of timber. They're these vital ecosystems that give us clean air, water, and countless other benefits. They regulate our climate, they support biodiversity and livelihoods. Protecting them is an investment in our future, and it needs a multi-pronged approach.
We've seen how important it is to combine strong policies with, smart technology and active community engagement. But it goes beyond just the technical stuff. Right? It's also about a shift in mindset, moving from complacency to being proactive.
You, as future leaders, you have the power to drive that change. By using this knowledge in your roles, you can advocate for a more sustainable and fire-resilient India.
And remember, you don't have to wait to be in some powerful position to make a difference. You can start today. Raise awareness, educate others, support those organizations that are working to protect our forests. Every step counts.
Absolutely. And if you want to dig deeper into this issue, we highly recommend checking out The Hindu. Their in-depth reporting on forest fires has been so valuable for our discussion today.
So to all our UPSC aspirants out there, that wraps up our deep dive into this burning issue of forest fires in India. We hope this episode gave you some valuable insights and maybe even inspire you to take action. Remember, every little bit of awareness, every action taken can help protect our nation's precious forests. So keep learning and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, best of luck with your preparation.